Mercedes thought they had the season under control, until Ferrari hit an upgrade that could erase their biggest weakness overnight. Not next month, not later in the season, right now, just days before Japan. Because after China, the data revealed something dangerous. Ferrari is already as fast as Mercedes in the corners, sometimes even faster, but they lose everything on the straights. And that's exactly what this new upgrade is designed to fix. A system so complex they tested it and then refused to use it in the race. Not because it failed, but because if they get it right, it changes everything. More speed, better energy deployment, less time lost where it matters most. And if that happens in Suzuka, Mercedes doesn't just lose an advantage, they lose control. Subscribe now, because what Ferrari is about to unleash in Japan could decide the entire championship. What you saw in Australia was not the full picture, and what happened in China was even more misleading. Because on the surface, it looks simple. Mercedes ahead, Ferrari chasing, gap under control. But that's not what the data actually says. Because if you isolate the most technical part of the track, the slow to medium speed corners, Ferrari is right there. Not close, right there, matching Mercedes corner for corner, sometimes even gaining time. And that changes everything. Because it means the car is not fundamentally slow. It means the problem is specific, targeted, and potentially fixable. But here's where things start to get uncomfortable for Mercedes. Because Ferrari is not just losing time randomly. They are losing it in one very precise place. The end of the straight. Not the entry. Not the middle. The end. That final moment where energy deployment decides everything. And this is where the gap appears. Every single lap. A small drop in speed. A slight loss of momentum. Just enough for Mercedes to stay ahead. And that's the kind of weakness that doesn't look dramatic, but destroys you over a race distance. Because you can't defend. You can't attack. You're always reacting. Never controlling. But that's only half the story. Because there's another pattern, and it's even more important. Ferrari starts strong. Very strong. The first laps of every stint. They look like a real threat. Aggressive. Precise. Fast. But then something happens. Not instantly. Not obviously. But steadily. The performance fades. Lap by lap. Grip starts to disappear. The car becomes harder to manage. And the lap times begin to slip. Meanwhile, Mercedes stays consistent. Calm. Stable. Always within the optimal window. And this is where races are quietly decided. Not in the first few laps, but in the last few. Now here's the part most people missed. Ferrari already knew this would happen. This wasn't a surprise. This wasn't a sudden issue. This is built into how the car currently works. Because the SF26 was designed around a completely new philosophy. New aerodynamics. New energy systems. New balance. Everything started from zero. Which means everything is still being understood. Still being optimized. Still being pushed to its limits. And when you design a car like that, you don't fix everything at once. You identify the weakest point, and you attack it. And Ferrari has made their choice. Not tires. Not corners, not even race pace. They are targeting the straights, because if they solve that, everything else becomes more dangerous. And that's exactly why what's coming in Japan is not just an upgrade, it's a shift in philosophy. And this is where things take a turn that most people didn't expect. Because when Ferrari says they are working on straight-line performance, it sounds simple, almost basic, like they just need more speed. But that's not what they're actually doing. They are not chasing raw power. They are chasing efficiency. And those are two completely different things. Because in this new era, you can have power and still be slow. If your energy deployment is not perfectly synchronized, you lose everything at the worst possible moment. And that is exactly what has been happening to Ferrari. They are not weak at the start of the straight. They are not slow in acceleration. They are losing performance at the end. When the battery begins to drain. When the system starts to clip. When every kilometer per hour matters the most. And this is where Mercedes has been almost perfect. They don't just deploy energy. They sustain it. Longer, cleaner, more efficiently. Which means that even if Ferrari exits the corner faster, they still get overtaken before the braking zone. And that is psychologically devastating for a driver. Because no matter how well you drive the corner, you know what's coming next. You know you can't defend. But here's where things get even more interesting. Because Ferrari's solution is not just about going faster in a straight line. It's about changing when the car is fast. Let that sink in, because this is the real shift. Instead of trying to match Mercedes everywhere, Ferrari is trying to control where the performance happens, where they attack, where they defend, where they deploy energy, and where they save it. And this connects directly to the upgrade coming in Japan, because the rear wing system is only one piece, the visible piece, the part everyone talks about. But behind that, there is something much more important, a complete recalibration of energy usage, deployment maps, recovery phases, driver input, even race strategy. Everything is being adjusted around one goal: hold performance longer, not just peak higher. And if they get this right, the effect is not small. It's exponential. Because now, Ferrari doesn't just arrive faster to straight. They stay fast. They defend. They control position. And suddenly, their biggest weakness disappears. But this is where the risk becomes real. Because extending performance usually means stressing the system more. More heat, more degradation, more instability. And we already know Ferrari struggles when the tires go beyond the optimal window. So now they are walking a very thin line. Push too hard, and the car falls apart in the final laps. Hold back too much, and Mercedes stays out of reach. And this is exactly why Japan is so critical. Because Suzuka doesn't forgive imbalance. It exposes it. Every high-speed corner, every direction change, every long load phase. It forces the car to reveal the truth. And Ferrari knows this. They are not bringing this upgrade to experiment. They are bringing it to validate everything. Because if it works here, then it's real, not theoretical, not situational, real performance. And if that happens, then what we saw in Australia and China was just the beginning of something much bigger. Because the gap was never as safe as it looked. But here's the part that changes the entire narrative, and almost nobody is paying attention to it. Ferrari didn't just bring an upgrade. They delayed it. Think about that. In China, they already had the new rear wing concept ready. They tested it. They collected data. They ran it on track. And then they chose not to use it in the race. Not because it didn't work, but because it wasn't perfect. And that decision tells you everything. Because teams fighting for podiums take risks. Teams fighting for championships wait. And Ferrari is starting to behave like the second one. But this opens a much bigger question. What exactly did they see in that data? Because you don't hold back a potentially game-changing upgrade unless the gain is real, and the risk is even bigger. And this is where things go deeper, because this rear wing is not just about reducing drag. It's about controlling airflow in a completely different way, a way that directly affects how the car interacts with the air at high speed, and more importantly, how stable it remains while doing it. Because here's the hidden problem. When you reduce drag to gain speed, you also reduce stability. Less resistance, less control, more sensitivity. And at circuits like Suzuka, that is extremely dangerous. Fast corners, minimal margin for error, and constant load on the car. One small imbalance, an entire setup collapses. So Ferrari had a choice. Use the upgrade early and risk getting it wrong. Or wait, understand it completely, and deploy it when it matters most. They chose to wait. And that's why Japan is not just another race. It's the moment they've been preparing for. But here's where the pressure shifts. Because now, it's not just about Ferrari improving. It's about Mercedes reacting. And right now, Mercedes has no reason to panic. They have the advantage. They have consistency. They have control of the race pace. But that's exactly what makes this situation dangerous. Because when you're ahead, you stop expecting a sudden change. You optimize what you already have. You refine. You stabilize. You protect the lead. And that works until someone changes the rules of the game. Not the official rules, the performance rules. And Ferrari is trying to do exactly that. Because if this upgrade works as intended, Mercedes won't lose slowly. They will lose suddenly. Corner by corner, Ferrari is already there. If the straight line deficit disappears, there is nowhere left to hide. And this connects to something even bigger. Something that goes beyond Japan. Because Ferrari is not just developing parts. They are building a trajectory, a sequence. China was data collection. Japan is validation. And Miami is escalation. A full upgrade package is already expected. More efficiency, better integration, a more complete car. So this is not a single moment. It's a chain reaction. And if Japan confirms the first step, then everything that comes after becomes more dangerous. For Mercedes, for the championship, for the entire grid. But there's still one final layer to this. One that could decide everything. Because even if the upgrade works, even if Ferrari gains speed, even if they close the gap, there is one question that remains unanswered. Can they sustain it over a full race distance? Because we've already seen what happens when their performance drops. We've already seen how the tires react. We've already seen how the pace fades. So now, they are not just adding performance. They are increasing pressure on every system. Aerodynamics, energy, tires, balance. Everything must work together perfectly. And in Formula One, that is the hardest thing to achieve. Which means the real story of Japan is not whether Ferrari is faster. It's whether they can finally hold that speed from the first lap to the last. And this is where everything finally comes together, because now there's nowhere left to hide. Not for Ferrari, not for Mercedes, not for anyone watching this championship unfold. Because Japan will answer a question that has been building since the first lap in Australia. A question that China made impossible to ignore. Was Ferrari ever truly behind? Or were they simply incomplete? Because if you go back and you connect every piece, the strong starts, the pace in technical sectors, the ability to fight wheel to wheel, it was all there, just not at the same time, not in one complete package. And that's the difference between competing and winning. But now, for the first time this season, Ferrari is about to bring everything together. The cornering speed, the energy management adjustments, the aerodynamic efficiency, and most importantly, the intent. Because this is no longer about understanding the car. That phase is over. Now it's about exploiting it, maximizing it, pushing it to the limit. And that changes the mindset completely. Because when a team stops learning and starts attacking, that's when the real danger begins. But let's be clear about something. If Ferrari gets this right, this is not a small gain. This is not a few tenths. This is a structural shift. Because the only thing keeping Mercedes in control right now is the straight line advantage. That final phase of the lap. That moment where Ferrari had no answer. Take that away, and suddenly Mercedes is exposed.